things were never the same ever since I mentioned the Zodiac Beasts. During my overview of Pokemon's Ultra Beast in my last video, I was reminded of how Boiple was considered a starter in their own dimension. The same dimension that Crozma comes from. But the thing is, Pokemon starters usually come in threes. And yes, while Boiple may very well be the only starter in this alternative dimension, I was inspired to make 2 more lines of Ultra Beast starters. I thought it would be a nice short break from the indie game I'm trying to code, and would be a simple topic to make a quick video on. However, this ended up being one of the hardest challenges that I've ever attempted. Let's start with the types. Grass, Fire, and Water are an iconic trio, and in Pokemon, they form a perfect type triangle, where one type beats the other in a rock, paper, scissors-like fashion. Boiple, the only Ultra Beast starter we could reference, is a Poison type, who evolves into a Poison Dragon. So what's a type triangle that includes the Poison type? Seems like I'm not the only one who asked this question before, and some of you might already expect a certain answer here, as there's only one triangle with the Poison type where the types are super effective against each other. Poison, Ground, and Grass. And people have made fantastic designs with this trio. However, I wanted to do something different, especially because Grass is already part of a starter type triangle. A user named Criminal of Thought on Reddit made a very extensive list of type triangles based off of each type's super effectiveness on themselves and the other 2 types. Take a look at the list yourself, I'll link it in the description. But out of the perfect type triangles, the only ones that are super effective to each other is the Grass, Fire, Water core, and Fighting, Flying, and Rock. Poison, Ground, Grass barely isn't perfect, just because Ground is the only type that doesn't resist themselves, but people would mostly care about just what's super effective to each other. Super effective to each other. So even though Boiple is a Poison type, they evolve into Naganadel, who's a Poison Dragon. Now, most Pokemon starters aren't necessarily balanced off of the secondary typing they get, but this is a weird new dimension. And weirdly enough, the triangle that caught my eye was Poison Dragon being weak to ice, but also resisting electric types. Poison, electric, and ice? Nah, that's too weird. No way that could work. But then I realized something with the colors. So why did Pokemon choose Fire, Grass, and Water to be their main type trio? Whether it was intentional or not, red, green, and blue are primary colors of light, because those are the 3 different kinds of color receiving cone cells most people could have in their eyes. That's why I kept this RGB color scheme for my own project. But you might have been taught with the color wheel, where the primary colors are red, blue, and yellow. Well, here's the kicker. RGB are the primary colors of light, where light is being emitted. Like a laser that only produces a certain color, or a part of your electric screen that is only emitting that color. If you add differently colored light to each other, you end up with white light, frying your eyeballs. That's why red, green, and blue are called the primary colors in this additive model, making secondary colors of magenta, cyan, and yellow, which is closer to the red, blue, and yellow primary colors one might have been taught with the pigments color wheel. And that's the thing, in paints and pigments, the paint itself doesn't produce the light, it only absorbs incoming light and reflects a specific color for you to see. If you add different pigments, more and more light gets absorbed until you end up with black. This is the subtractive model, which is why printers use cyan, magenta, and yellow, and also black to not waste the other 3 just making that black. But back to Ultra Beast. Boiple is Wurple colored. So what if instead of primary colors of light, these Ultra Beast starters were the primary colors of the subtractive model, where Boiple is magenta, which leaves us with yellow and cyan. So I decided the type triangle for the first stage be Poison, Electric, and Ice, where they're all just neutral to each other, but they grow up to be super effective to each other. But if Ice beats Poison Dragon, the Ganondorf needs to beat this electric starter in some way. Now Poison Dragon, as an offensive type, only is super effective against grass, fairy, and dragon. I came this far to avoid using types from the common type triangle, and while I could use dragons all around, that will give the ice dragon a noticeable edge. Now, an electric fairy type might not sound like it should be weak to a dragon, but fairy moves could only deal neutral damage to a poison dragon type, while Naganadell's poison moves can hit electric fairy super effectively. So if we're going with electric fairy, this starter now has to beat the ice starter in some way. The options boil down to water, flying, fighting, or dark. I ended up choosing fighting as I thought that would be the most interesting. But yeah, the end result wasn't the most balanced type triangle, but I wanted to offer something new to the table, and I've already spent way too much time on what is supposed to be a brief break. Now luckily, the concepts fell into place quite quickly. Pokemon's Ultra Beasts were based off the concept of invasive species. In respects to Hawaii, there's unfortunately quite a lot of them, including killer bees. So I referenced the invasive species list to find two other species to be a yellow electric Ultra Beast and a cyan ice-typed Ultra Beast. I chose the thorny Barbados gooseberry cactus, who are unfortunately smothering native plant life, and the quickly spreading snowflake corals, who are overtaking other corals underwater. Now, even though they both don't move very much, this is another dimension. I could surely find some ways to make designs out of these, but then came the hardest part of this challenge, making the actual design. You see, while I've been making several creature designs over the years, I personally found starters to be one of the harder designs to do. They are your introduction to a region, the first impressions. You gotta make them compelling and approachable, just like how every YouTube video needs a good hook. However, Ultra Beasts are Pokemon designs that are purposefully odd and unconventional to look like they're not from the same dimension. How do you make a design that's odd, yet compelling? Well, the only example I could reference is Boipel and Naganadel, designed by James Turner, where they're both bees. Well, upon further inspection, Boipel has quite the odd body shape for a bee because the stinger is on their head instead. So, when making an Ultra Beast starter, I'm trying to make something cute, but use an unconventional body type to sell on the oddness factor. And even when they evolve, they still have a recognizable face, possibly to be more relatable than some of the other Ultra Beasts. So, I ended up with the following designs, starting with the Serpentine Electro. Their hands are like little chompers, and their face is a digital screen. I tried to translate the gooseberry shrub into wires, but then I had to steer away from the canon Ultra Beast circuitry, but the Electro would evolve into Shock Orb. I kinda wanted to add the fictional Iron Maiden kind of a vibe with the spikes. Now the chompers are released from the main wire to bite everyone around them. So yeah, I've spent way too much time on what was supposed to be a short diversion, so I ended up kind of crunching the snowflake coral, starting with Frosteel, with only 4 spokes, which felt enough to resemble a snowflake from another dimension. They got little crystals hanging down like a sombrero with dingle balls. And while I wish I had more time to comb over the evolution, I was bouncing between making a deer, another invasive species to Hawaii, and making more of a humanoid design cause it's gonna be fighting type. I ended up with a more cowboy look. See, usually with designs like these, I kinda shelve them away and come back to it weeks or even months later. I don't plan on having these exact designs in my personal project, but these designs definitely inspired me to include a few more subjects to Stemma later in the future. So yeah, my personal project Stemma is a collection of STEM-based creatures that I've been making over the past few years, and only in the last year did I decide to make a game. It used to be on Unity, but then I started over last September using Godot. I'll be making a video about my development sometime in the future, but until then, I want to end my videos by going over another Zodiac Beast. To be clear, these 12 beasts aren't planned to be in Stema. I mean, if I had all the time in the world, I'd make a separate chapter just for them, but I can't guarantee that when I'm just barely finishing coding up random encounters. But the Zodiac Beast, named pending, are designs I had lying around back in the past where they might loosely resemble the symbols of the Zodiac, but they ultimately cover some niche and fun science topics. So today, we'll talk about Virgo. What does Virgo's horoscope say? It says that you'll have a nice day today. Now, did you know? During a thunderstorm, above the stormy clouds, there are elves looking down at you. Well, elves as an emission of light and very low frequency perturbations due to electromagnetic pulse sources. It's like a quick expanding ring in the ionosphere. See, when there's a thunderstorm, the lightning can cause disturbances in the upper levels of the atmosphere, yielding something called transient luminous events. These include elves, blue jets, and red sprites, just to name a few. While elves relatively occur at the highest altitude, today's Zodiac Beast is mostly referencing the red sprite, which are formed similarly to how auroras occur, by having some atoms in the atmosphere get excited, either due to a sudden imbalance of charges like from a lightning strike, or due to solar storms. Then afterwards, those excited atoms release energy in their signature color, where nitrogen emits reds and blues depending on the pressure. Red sprites occur at a lower altitude than that of auroras, so there's more nitrogen in the air to make a red color, and blue jets occur even lower in the atmosphere, which makes that same nitrogen emit a blue color instead, because of the pressure difference. Mind you, this is still pretty high up, this is all above the clouds. So with all that said, here is Spirigo, who rises above the clouds to quietly survey the land, waiting for something that only they know. I would honestly want to give them the levitate ability, but I'm just writing down beast boosts for now. Plus I want to reiterate that if any of my designs that I show on this channel end up in my game, the abilities are for sure changing. I just use Pokemon terms in my YouTube videos so that more people can understand what the concept is like. Now, there are some fascinating videos covering transient luminous events, including a discovery from a few years ago in this video by Pico's Hank. So please check out these videos, cause I'll leave a lot of links in the description. What was supposed to be a quick break ended up being one of the harder challenges I set up for myself. And while I'm not completely happy with my results and would usually come back to such a design weeks later, I was still able to be inspired for a future design for my own project later down the road. My work on the game portion of Stema is continuing as usual on Godot, but you can check out all the past designs that I've shown off on YouTube in my Stema playlist here. And I want to thank my Patreon members for directly supporting my work. I provide weekly game dev snapshots of the game for my highest tier of Patreon members, but you could always like and subscribe this channel for free, where I'll eventually talk about what I've been cooking on Godot. It's just gonna take a long time. So, thank you for watching my video, and I hope, Virgo or not, that you would seek and find the wonders beyond the storm.